Weak, ignorant fool. That's what Donald Trump spat at Jasmine Crockett the moment she stepped into the room. In a hearing watched by over 50 million Americans, the stakes couldn't have been higher. One woman standing for justice, one man trying to bend the truth to protect billions of dollars in power. Jasmine knew she was walking into a battlefield. Every word, every glance, every motion would be scrutinized. And Trump? He was ready to call her every name in the book, to make sure the world doubted her before she even spoke. But as the cameras rolled and the room fell silent, something strange happened. What started as an attack turned into a war of truth versus deception, with every claim tested against the harsh glare of reality. By the end of this hearing, history would remember who dared to stand alone and who hid behind lies. The grand doors of the hearing room creaked open, drawing every eye in the room and across the nation toward Jasmine Crockett. She stepped forward like a storm barely contained, her black vest sharp and precise, her shoulders squared with unshakable confidence. Every movement was calculated, deliberate, exuding the quiet assurance of someone who knew exactly what she was walking into. Cameras whirred and flashed, lights gleaming off polished floors, catching every glint of her determined gaze. Whispers rippled through the press corps, a mix of awe and tension hanging thick in the air. From the opposite end of the room, Donald Trump emerged, filling the space with a brash, almost tangible arrogance. His presence alone seemed to dominate the room, a physical weight pressing against the walls. A smug, almost mocking smile curled across his face as he leaned forward, scanning the crowd with a gaze that dared anyone to challenge him. Then his voice cut through the silence, sharp and taunting. "Who dares to tell me I don't understand the law?" The words reverberated off the walls, a declaration of power as much as a challenge. He slammed his hand down on the polished oak table, the microphone shuddering violently under the impact. The echo of the bang seemed to jolt the room, forcing an involuntary, collective intake of breath. Jasmine didn't flinch. She stood tall, gripping her dossier like a shield, her calm composure a stark contrast to the storm of aggression radiating from her opponent. The air between them crackled like electricity, the unspoken understanding that this was no ordinary hearing. Then it began, the first volley in a battle that would grip the nation. Trump's words came like fire, each syllable a challenge. "You're just a naive child. Don't try to lecture me on life or power. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Jasmine's voice cut through the tension like a knife through silk. "You've spent years drowning in lies and excuses. Listen carefully. Truth spares no one, not even you." Her words landed with weight, resonating not just in the room, but through the screens of millions of Americans watching live. Over 50 million eyes were on them, every flicker of expression magnified, every gesture dissected. The room seemed to pulse with energy. Trump leaned back, a flash of frustration crossing his face, his fingers drumming impatiently against the table. Jasmine held her ground, her eyes locked on his, unwavering. She could feel the weight of every historical precedent, every injustice, every story of abuse and corruption that had led her to this moment. She knew that a single misstep could shift the balance, yet every word she spoke was deliberate, a calculated strike designed to pierce through decades of denial and deception. This was more than a confrontation. It was a collision of worlds, arrogance meeting principle, ego facing righteousness. Every phrase, every glance, every tiny shift of posture was loaded with intent. The press cameras captured it all, the narrowing of her eyes, the tightening of his jaw, the subtle tilt of her head signaling readiness, the flicker of anger flashing across his face. Sparks flew, though no one touched a thing. The tension was a living thing, stretching the room taut, waiting for a single misstep to ignite chaos. Trump's voice rose, bolder now, edged with venom. "You really think standing there with your righteous words makes you stronger than me? You're nothing but a weak, ignorant fool, Crockett. Do you hear me? Nothing." Jasmine's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Her response was slow, deliberate, cutting. "You underestimate the power of truth, Donald. Power built on lies is fragile, and those who defend it crumble under scrutiny. You may control the stage, But the people see every deception you've wrapped in charm and bravado. The room went silent for a heartbeat, and even the seasoned journalists felt the weight of the moment. Every flicker of motion, every beat of sweat, every subtle twitch and expression seemed amplified in the charged atmosphere. Trump's smirk faltered, and for the first time, the controlled arrogance gave way to irritation, almost panic. Jasmine's calm was an unspoken challenge, a mirror reflecting the cracks in his carefully constructed facade. It was raw, it was electric, it was unrelenting. By the end of these first few minutes, the audience was already gripped, unable to look away. Every reaction, every word, every clash of wills was a study in tension, a masterclass in how a single hearing could capture the drama of an entire nation. The room, the cameras, the microphones, all bore witness to a moment that would not soon be forgotten. And as this fierce exchange continued to unfold, one truth became undeniable. This was the story of courage against power, justice against deception, and the unwavering resolve of one woman willing to face a titan. If you want to witness every cut, every retort, every moment where truth confronts lies head-on, subscribe to Harrison Stories, because this is where no silence goes unchallenged, and every story pulls you into the heart of justice. And yet the room's tension refused to relent. The first salvo had barely landed when Donald Trump, sensing the slightest crack in the air, leaned forward with a predatory smirk. His eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto Jasmine Crockett as if searching for a weakness he could exploit. "You're young," he began, his voice dripping with scorn, "and yet you dare to criticize me? Do you really believe you have the experience to lecture someone like me?" The words hung in the air, heavy with derision, each syllable designed to belittle and intimidate. Trump's hand gestured broadly, emphasizing every word, and the polished oak table seemed to tremble beneath the weight of his ego. Journalists scribbled furiously, the live feed capturing every nuance of his tone, every twitch of his expression. The tension was palpable. The world was watching, and Trump wanted to make sure everyone felt his dominance. Jasmine, however, did not flinch. Her stance remained unwavering, her grip on her dossier unshakable, her eyes glinting with a controlled fire. She tilted her chin slightly, letting a faint, almost imperceptible smirk curve her lips, and then spoke, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "The older you grow, the more you prove that maturity for you has meant mastering deception." Her words landed like a hammer. The room went silent, and even the most seasoned reporters leaned forward instinctively. Every camera lens focused on the small flash of triumph in Jasmine's eyes. Trump's jaw tightened. The smirk that had been his armor wavered, if only for a heartbeat. The audience at home sensed it. Here was a woman who would not bend, who refused to be intimidated, who wielded truth as deftly as a blade. Trump slammed his fist against the table, the thunderous crack echoing through the hearing room like a gunshot. Microphones quivered, papers rattled, and the sound of collective gasps punctuated the tension. His face reddened, veins prominent along his neck, his voice rising over the stunned silence. "Do you hear me, Crockett? You're nothing. Your youth, your naivety, your so-called righteousness, it means nothing against me." Jasmine did not flinch, did not blink, and most importantly, did not let emotion override precision. She leaned forward slightly, her voice slicing through the noise, measured yet cutting. "Power built on lies always trembles under scrutiny, Donald. And here I am, standing under the glare of truth, while you cling desperately to the illusions you've created." The cameras pivoted sharply, capturing the subtle shifts in the audience's expressions. Some wide-eyed, some whispering into microphones, all aware that they were witnessing a moment that would be dissected for decades. Every subtle shift in posture, every twitch of muscle, every micro-expression told a story. Trump's anger was no longer contained. It radiated, visible in the flush of his face and the trembling of his hands. Jasmine's calm, in contrast, became a weapon of its own, slicing through the room like a cold wind that left no corner untouched. Trump jabbed a finger at her, his tone dripping with accusation. "You think standing there and speaking with such confidence makes you superior? You don't know the battles, the stakes, the pressures I've faced. You're untested, and you dare lecture me on responsibility? Jasmine's gaze sharpened, almost icy in its intensity. She tilted her head slightly, the smallest motion, yet it carried an entire universe of meaning. Responsibility, she echoed softly, her words deliberate, is measured not by who can shout the loudest, Donald, but by who can stand when the world watches, when lies surround you, and still insist on truth. I am tested every day. You, on the other hand, are tested only by your ability to avoid it. For a heartbeat, the room seemed suspended in time. Every whispered note of air, every shuffle of papers, every flicker of a camera lens amplified the tension to near unbearable levels. Trump's lips parted, his mind searching for a retort, but Jasmine held the narrative firmly in her grasp. The room was no longer simply a stage for argument, it had become a battlefield. Each word a tactical strike, each glance a maneuver in a war of wills. And then Trump, unable to contain the fury that simmered beneath his carefully crafted facade, slammed his hand again on the table, shaking the microphones, rattling papers, and drawing gasps from the spectators. "You are defiant," he roared, his voice cracking under the intensity of his own anger. "You dare to challenge me, Crockett, and you have no idea what it costs to cross me?" Jasmine, unwavering, let the silence stretch before answering. Her voice was calm, precise, almost surgical in its delivery. "I know exactly what it costs to face someone who hides behind power and fear, Donald. But standing for justice, that cost is mine to bear, and mine alone. And I will bear it, every time, against anyone who refuses to see the truth." The room exhaled collectively, and even the cameras seemed to hesitate, catching the tension lingering like smoke. Every viewer at home could feel the electric charge of the confrontation. This was no ordinary exchange. This was a duel of intellect, courage, and raw human resolve, where neither the bluster of age nor the boldness of youth could dominate entirely. By the end of this opening confrontation, one fact was undeniable. Jasmine Crockett had not only stood her ground, she had defined the terms of the battle. Trump's attempts to intimidate, belittle, and dominate had been met with sharp precision, a relentless assertion of truth against ego. And the audience, at home and in the room, knew they had witnessed the beginning of a war that would be remembered for its sheer intensity. The room seemed to hum with anticipation, a charged silence that preceded the next strike. Jasmine shifted slightly, the subtle scrape of her shoes on the polished floor, the only sound before she opened her dossier. She leaned forward, fingers brushing the crisp edges of the files as if she were about to unleash a storm. Cameras swiveled, capturing every motion, every deliberate flick of the wrist, every breath held in suspense by millions watching across the world. With a practiced precision, she pulled out a series of documents, emails, transaction records, and internal memos, each one meticulously compiled, each one a thread in a tapestry of undeniable evidence. The emails detailed financial manipulations, offshore accounts, and questionable investments tied directly to Trump's personal ventures. Figures jumped off the page like jagged lightning bolts. Millions shifted, loans concealed, donations rerouted. The kind of detail that left even seasoned auditors blinking in disbelief. Trump's eyes narrowed as he leaned closer, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. The smug confidence he had carried moments ago began to crumble under the weight of the evidence now displayed before him. "This is absurd," he snapped, his voice cutting through the thick, expectant air. "You are fabricating lies. You are accusing me falsely." He reached for the microphone with a sudden, jerking motion, his grip tight, veins pulsing along his forearm. His hand shook slightly, betraying a crack in his usually ironclad composure. Jasmine's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smirk. Her voice remained calm, measured, yet carried a blade of sharp irony that sliced through the tension like glass. "The more furious you become, Donald, the more you prove that everything I'm saying is true. Anger does not hide guilt, it reveals it." The room seemed to exhale collectively, the audience leaning forward as if the slightest movement could change the outcome. Camera lenses rotated frantically, capturing Trump's growing disbelief, the twitch of his jaw, the subtle flare of nostrils. He stomped his foot, a percussive punctuation to his rage, and the microphone rattled violently. Reporters froze, pens poised over notepads, eyes wide. The silence was deafening, only broken by the occasional shuffle of papers or the soft hum of distant air vents. Trump's voice rose again, now almost a roar. How dare you? You have no idea what you're implying. This is slander, it's illegal. I've done nothing wrong. He leaned forward aggressively, his chest nearly brushing the table, finger jabbing toward Jasmine, each motion punctuated by raw, unfiltered fury. Jasmine remained perfectly still, eyes glinting, voice steady, and every word she uttered carried weight. Donald, I don't need to imagine wrongdoing. You've documented it yourself. Every transaction, every email, every attempt to manipulate finances for personal gain. It's all here. Denial won't erase the truth. For the first time, the usually untouchable aura of Trump seemed fractured, his eyes flicking between the documents and Jasmine, each movement betraying a growing panic. The audience could sense it too. The air was thick with anticipation, the weight of revelation pressing down like a physical force. Every flash from a camera felt like a spotlight exposing the cracks in his armor. Trump slammed the table again, the resounding bang echoing like thunder across the chamber. His words erupted in a torrent of rage. You are lying. You are trying to ruin me in front of the world. How dare you accuse me with nothing but paper and hearsay? Jasmine's smirk widened slightly, the faintest trace of triumph visible, but her tone remained icy, deliberate, and precise. These are not accusations, Donald. These are facts. Facts you can no longer hide behind, no matter how loudly you shout or how many walls you try to build around yourself. And each word of protest from you only confirms what the world is beginning to see. The truth cannot be silenced by anger. The room seemed to freeze for a heartbeat, every camera capturing the subtle flash of disbelief in Trump's eyes. His mouth opened, then closed, words faltering as the undeniable weight of evidence settled over him. The audience could see it, his veneer of control cracking under the spotlight of justice. Jasmine, in contrast, radiated unshakable composure, the embodiment of a calm yet unstoppable force standing firm in the face of intimidation. Even the air felt different, charged, heavy with tension. Every inhale, every movement of pen, every flash of light felt magnified, as though the room itself understood the magnitude of what was happening. Jasmine's revelation wasn't just a statement, it was a seismic shockwave, shaking the foundations of power and control that Trump had relied upon for decades. And as she laid the final document on the table, the silence stretched like taut wire, humming with the weight of inevitability. Millions of viewers at home leaned closer to their screens, hearts pounding, eyes locked on the confrontation unfolding in real time. Every gesture, every glance, every reaction told a story more compelling than any fiction. In that room, with cameras spinning and history watching, one truth was undeniable. Jasmine Crockett had not merely exposed evidence. She had ignited a storm that would not be contained by denial, by rage, or by power. And for those watching, the question was clear. Who would stand and who would crumble when the weight of truth hit full force? Trump's face twisted into a mask of fury, his usually controlled arrogance erupting into raw aggression. Leaning forward, he jabbed a finger toward Jasmine, his voice slicing through the tense silence like a knife. You are nothing but a fraud, a pathetic little actor playing cheap political games. Do you think this courtroom is a stage for your theatrics? The words landed with a venomous smack, meant to humiliate, to belittle, to provoke. Reporters froze mid-note, cameras spinning to capture every twitch of her expression. The spectators, both in the room and at home, felt the heat of the confrontation like an invisible fire scorching the air. The tension became almost tactile, the kind of silence that presses against your chest and forces every heartbeat into sharp relief. Jasmine did not flinch. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, met Trump's with the intensity of a lightning strike. Her voice, calm, yet edged with lethal precision, cut through the room. Donald, you have no right, no authority, and certainly no credibility to stand here and attack me. Your words are hollow. Your so-called power is built on lies and fear, and I am standing here, unaltered, unbroken, and unwilling to be intimidated by your theatrics. The room seemed to hold its breath. Every camera lens focused on the subtle movements, the tightening of Trump's jaw, the flare of his nostrils, the clenching of his fists. Meanwhile, Jasmine's poise became an anchor, a calm in the eye of the storm that radiated unspoken strength. Every word she spoke was like a scalpel, slicing precisely through the pretense, exposing the raw, unguarded truth beneath the veneer of aggression. Trump's response was instant, almost explosive. He slammed his hand down on the table, sending the microphone quivering violently, a sharp echo that punctuated his words with undeniable force. "How dare you?" he roared. "You think standing there spouting rhetoric makes you a hero? You are naive, weak, and utterly incapable of understanding the weight of what you're talking about." Jasmine leaned forward slightly, her calm intensity only amplifying the force of her next words. "Naive? Weak? Donald, it is you who is weak. Weak in honesty, weak in accountability, weak in every claim you have ever made about leadership. I stand here representing truth, justice, and millions who demand it. While you," she paused, letting the weight of her words sink in, "hide behind your wealth, your ego, and your lies." The room erupted in a wave of tension so thick it felt almost cinematic. Caught in the electric charge were the reporters scribbling frantically, the voters seated stiffly in their chairs, and millions watching from screens across the nation, all holding their breath as if even a blink might alter the outcome. Trump's face betrayed disbelief. The smirk that had once been his armor had evaporated, replaced with red-hot fury and visible panic. He leaned closer, voice rising to a shout that shook the polished walls. "You will not humiliate me. You will not dictate the narrative in this room. I built this empire. I built this reputation, and you dare to question it in front of the world?" Jasmine's lips curved in the faintest, coldest smile, and her next words were delivered like a blade through tension-soaked air. "What you call an empire, Donald, is nothing but a fragile tower of deceit. Every outburst, every attempt to intimidate, only confirms what I, and the public, already know. You are afraid, and that fear is your weakness exposed." The cameras captured every inch of Trump's faltering composure, the subtle twitch of his eyes, the tense clenching of his jaw, the barely restrained anger in his tone. Meanwhile, Jasmine's stance never wavered, her calm precision a stark contrast that magnified the power of her words. Each statement she made landed like a hammer, striking at the heart of his ego, unraveling the carefully constructed persona he relied upon to dominate rooms like this. The tension reached its apex as Trump, in a last desperate attempt to assert control, slammed his hand down once more, causing papers to flutter across the table. His voice thundered across the room. "You are nothing. You are insignificant. How dare you challenge me in front of the world?" Jasmine's voice, still cool, still unwavering, carried over the echo. "Insignificant? Donald, history will remember the brave, the honest, and the unyielding. And standing here today, with evidence and truth in hand, I am none of those things you fear. I am the accountability you refuse to face." A hush fell over the room. Even the cameras seemed to pause, capturing the stunned expressions of reporters, voters, and staff. It was as if time itself had slowed, marking a pivotal moment where courage met arrogance head-on. The confrontation was no longer simply verbal. It had become a statement of principles, a vivid tableau of justice against unchecked power. And as the tension lingered, electric and palpable, Jasmine's eyes scanned the room once more, connecting with the cameras, with the audience, and with history itself. For those following this storm of words, one thing was clear. The battle was far from over, but every second of it mattered. If you want to witness every twist, every heated exchange, every moment where truth confronts power with unflinching resolve, make sure to subscribe to Harrison Stories, where no lie goes unchallenged and every story pulls you deeper into the heart of justice. And as the echoes of Jasmine's sharp words faded into the tense air, she allowed herself a momentary pause, the slightest tilt of her chin signaling that the next revelation would leave no room for doubt. The audience leaned in instinctively, cameras pivoting, microphones straining to capture the tension that had become almost suffocating. Trump's chest heaved with barely contained fury, his fingers drumming violently against the table. But Jasmine's calm demeanor was a deliberate contrast, a silent promise that the storm had only just begun. With a measured breath, she reached into the folder on the table, producing a tablet that glowed under the harsh chamber lights. "This," she said, her voice steady and authoritative, "is the evidence that has been hidden from the public, but it will no longer remain secret." She swiped the screen, and a video began to play. Grainy at first, then sharp, undeniable, showing transactions, meetings, and conversations that painted a picture impossible to ignore. The room collectively froze. Reporters' pens halted mid-sentence. Microphones tilted slightly as camera operators scrambled to catch the unfolding spectacle. Every eye in the chamber, voters, journalists, staff, was glued to the screen, the gravity of the moment sinking in with an almost physical weight. Emails accompanied the clip, highlighted passages exposing deliberate manipulation, offshore transfers, and financial moves that contradicted every claim Trump had publicly made. Figures appeared in bold, tens of millions rerouted, disguised in layers of corporate jargon meant to obscure the truth. Trump's composure cracked. The smugness that had been his armor slipped away, replaced by visible panic. He lunged toward the microphone, voice shaking with desperation. "This is fake, fabricated. You are lying to the world, Crockett." But his fury faltered mid-sentence. Jasmine's eyes met his with a calm, icy precision, her lips curling into a faint, almost imperceptible smirk. "The more you shout, Donald," she said, her voice slicing through the charged air, "the more everyone can see exactly what you are trying to hide. Anger doesn't erase truth. It exposes it." The audience reacted instantly. A wave of murmurs rolled through the chamber, reporters whispering, some capturing every angle, others replaying the clip on secondary devices. The cogs of the media machine clicked into overdrive. The world was watching. Every flicker of Trump's face, the tight jaw, the narrowing eyes, the quick inhale between words, betrayed his loss of control. For the first time, he appeared unmoored, floundering against a force he could not dominate. Jasmine swiped again, bringing up detailed email chains, each message revealing intent, coordination, and a pattern of manipulation that left no room for denial. "These aren't allegations," she continued, her voice unwavering. "These are facts, and facts don't bend to ego, wealth, or threats." Trump slammed a hand onto the table, shaking the microphone violently. "You have no idea what you're saying. This is all lies, all part of a smear campaign." His words rang hollow, the room picking up on the tremor in his voice, the desperation that laced every syllable. Jasmine leaned forward, her eyes glinting with a calculated fire. "Lies, Donald. The documents, the videos, the emails. They speak louder than any protestation. You can shout, you can rage, you can threaten, but truth is heavier than your words, and it lands every time. The harder you try to hide, the clearer it becomes for everyone watching. The facts are on display, and you cannot erase them." The tension became almost unbearable, the kind that presses against your chest and slows your heartbeat. Trump's gestures grew erratic, pointing, shaking, trying to regain command, but each action only emphasized his unraveling. Meanwhile, Jasmine's calm, deliberate movements, the tap of her pen, the shift of her wrist, the precise way she gestured toward the documents, were a masterclass in control and poise. Every flash from the cameras, every scribble from a reporter's notebook, every gasp from the audience reinforced the magnitude of what was happening. The clip, now replayed for emphasis, exposed a timeline of manipulations too blatant to ignore, a trail of decisions that contradicted every claim Trump had made about honesty and integrity. The room's energy was electric, a charged storm of revelation and reaction. Trump attempted one last surge, voice cracking, "You are nothing but a liar trying to destroy me in front of everyone." Jasmine's reply was surgical, delivered with the calm of someone who knows the weight of every word. "Donald, history doesn't remember those who scream the loudest. History remembers those who face truth without flinching. And standing here, exposing what has been hidden, is not an attack. It's accountability. Every viewer, every voter, every journalist sees it. You cannot control it. You cannot rewrite it. And the harder you fight, the more obvious your fear becomes. The room erupted. Cameras spun, microphones recorded the gasps, murmurs surged like a wave crashing over the chamber. Trump, visibly shaken, stumbled in words and composure, overpowered by the evidence that Jasmine had meticulously laid bare. The moment was undeniable. The balance of power had shifted, and for the first time in this confrontation, Trump was on the defensive. And as Jasmine held the tablet aloft, letting the clip loop once more, her eyes scanned the room, meeting the lenses of every camera, connecting with millions at home. One undeniable truth resonated through every viewer. The storm of evidence had landed, and no amount of rage could undo it. Trump's face contorted in a mixture of fury and disbelief. The carefully crafted mask of control he had worn for decades began to crack, revealing raw, unfiltered anger underneath. He slammed his fist on the polished oak table, the reverberation echoing like a warning shot through the chamber. "You are nothing but a trashy tool," he bellowed, voice booming and trembling with the intensity of his fury. "A puppet of people who want to destroy me." The room seemed to shrink under the force of his outburst. Papers shook, microphones quivered violently, and every camera snapped to catch the eruption. The journalists scribbled frantically, capturing not just words but the sheer energy of a man teetering on the edge of losing control. Spectators in the gallery gasped collectively, as if the sound of his rage had physically struck them. Trump's voice rose and fell like a tempest, each shout meant to intimidate, to dominate, to crush the defiance that Jasmine so calmly displayed. Jasmine did not flinch. Her posture remained unwavering, the faint curve of a smirk forming as she met his gaze. She adjusted the tablet slightly, letting it illuminate the evidence once again, and her voice, calm but sharp, sliced through the storm of his shouting. "Donald, the traitor cloaked in hypocrisy is not me," she said, her words deliberate, each syllable a precise strike. "It is you, the one hiding behind lies, manipulation, and fear, while pretending to lead." The impact of her statement hung in the air like a lightning bolt, electrifying the tension in the room. Trump's hand twitched, his lips parted to respond, but words failed him for a fleeting second, a crack in the armor that Jasmine immediately recognized. Cameras swiveled, capturing the subtle signs of vulnerability. The narrowing of his eyes, the shallow breaths, the slight shake in his clenched fist. Each motion told a story more revealing than any speech could convey. Trump roared again, pounding the table with such force that papers skidded across the polished surface. "How dare you?" "Ha!" he shouted, voice cracking under the pressure. "You don't understand the stakes, the power, the responsibilities I bear. You're nothing but a child pretending to play in a man's world." Jasmine leaned forward ever so slightly, eyes narrowing, voice steady, dripping with precision. "Child," she echoed, letting the single word hang in the charged air before delivering the coup de grace. "Donald, the child is the one who refuses to take responsibility, who hides behind bluster and ego, who manipulates truth for personal gain. I am here because I bear responsibility, not for my own gain, but for justice. And that is something you have never understood, nor will ever comprehend." The gallery was silent, the tension palpable, as if the room itself were holding its breath. Reporters froze mid-note, cameras capturing the small, almost imperceptible flickers of emotion across Trump's face. The audience at home sensed the weight of the confrontation, the sheer scale of a verbal duel that carried stakes far beyond the room itself. Every gasp, every shuffling foot, every shutter click amplified the electric energy of the moment. Trump's hands clawed at the table, his attempts to regain control becoming frantic, almost unhinged. "You will not humiliate me. I built this. I've led this country," he shouted, each word laden with desperation. "You have no idea what you're saying, Crockett." Jasmine's smirk widened subtly, though her voice remained measured, surgical, and devastatingly precise. "Build," she repeated, letting the word resonate. "What you have built is an empire of deceit, a kingdom of lies. Leadership is not measured by wealth, nor by how loudly you can shout. It is measured by integrity, courage, in accountability. And today, Donald, the world sees clearly where each of us stands. The cameras captured the subtle tremor in Trump's jaw, the narrowing of his nostrils, and the rapid blinking that betrayed his attempt to regain composure. His usual arsenal of bluster, intimidation, and theatrics seemed impotent against the calm, unwavering certainty in Jasmine's tone. Every gesture he made only reinforced her dominance in this battle of wills, highlighting the contrast between rage and reason, fear and courage. Trump leaned forward, voice nearly a growl now. "You think this will destroy me? You think your theatrics and videos make you superior?" Jasmine's eyes glinted like steel, her voice sharp, unwavering, yet almost soft in its deadly precision. "I do not seek to destroy you, Donald. The world will do that on its own if truth is ignored. I am here to reveal it, to hold accountable, to stand firm when others tremble. And the louder you scream, the clearer it becomes for everyone watching. You have nothing to hide behind but fear." The room seemed to pulse with every word, every glance, every movement. Reporters' pens scratched furiously, cameras pivoted for every angle, and viewers at home gripped their screens, unable to look away. Trump's fury was now a spectacle, while Jasmine's calm determination radiated power, precision, and inevitability. It was no longer a debate. It was a confrontation that would be studied, dissected, and remembered. And as the chamber settled, the microphones catching the echoes of the final words, Jasmine's eyes swept over the audience and the cameras one last time. She had not only stood her ground, she had commanded the room, turned the tide of confrontation, and demonstrated that truth, when wielded with courage and clarity, could overpower even the most furious storm. Just as the tension began to simmer, a subtle shift rippled through the room. From the far corner, a figure approached the front table, moving with quiet determination. It was one of Jasmine's closest allies, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for uncovering corruption that others dared not touch. In their hand was a thick dossier, bound and annotated, each page a meticulous record of financial manipulations, personal communications, and covert dealings, evidence that added layers of irrefutable weight to the revelations Jasmine had already presented. The ally placed the dossier on the table in front of Jasmine, their eyes locking with hers in a brief, wordless acknowledgement of the gravity of what was about to unfold. Jasmine flipped it open, scanning key pages and revealing figures and correspondences that sent an electric jolt through the chamber. "These documents," she began, voice steady but carrying the intensity of a lightning strike, "demonstrate a pattern of deliberate misconduct, not just isolated incidents. Every line here points to decisions made to mislead, to manipulate, and to conceal truths that the public deserves to know." The effect was instantaneous. Cameras swiveled, reporters leaned forward, and the audience, both in the room and at home, sensed the weight of yet another bombshell. Trump's face turned a shade redder, veins throbbing at his temples. His usual bravado wavered, replaced by a flicker of panic, as the realization of growing isolation began to dawn on him. He jabbed a finger toward Jasmine's ally, his voice rising in desperation and anger. You're nothing. You're part of this lie. Get out of here." The ally did not flinch, merely meeting his glare with unwavering composure. The room seemed to pulse with the tension of the confrontation. The air was thick, almost tangible, electric with the raw energy of a battle that had escalated beyond a single duel. Each sentence Trump spat, each accusation hurled, was met with the calm, deliberate counterweight of truth, precision, and evidence that he could neither deny nor evade. Jasmine's voice cut through the chaos like a sharpened blade, calm but impossibly commanding. "Donald, you are alone in this chamber with your lies, your fury, your bluster, your desperate attacks. It all underscores what everyone is already seeing. You are isolated with deceit while the truth surrounds me, backed by facts, witnesses, and undeniable evidence." A hush fell over the room. Reporters, witnesses, and spectators alike felt the shift in momentum. Where moments ago Trump had seemed powerful, commanding, and almost untouchable, now he appeared cornered, defensive, almost human in his vulnerability. Each flailing gesture, Each sharp retort only served to highlight the imbalance between raw aggression and deliberate, evidence-backed authority. Trump's voice trembled as he tried to regain command. This is ridiculous. You think bringing more people into this, more documents, changes anything? You can't destroy what I've built. You can't rewrite the narrative. Jasmine's eyes glinted, and she leaned slightly forward, letting the dossier slide toward him as if daring him to confront it directly. Donald, the narrative is not rewritten by threats, tantrums, or sheer force of personality. It is revealed by courage, transparency, and accountability. And every page in this dossier, every line of correspondence, exposes the reality of your choices. You cannot command it away, and you cannot hide from it. The cameras captured the tremor in Trump's jaw, the narrowing of his eyes, the subtle quiver of his hands as he clenched them into fists on the table. He attempted another verbal surge, voice cracking under the weight of the moment. You're all conspiring. You think this will humiliate me in front of everyone? You think you can topple me with papers and videos? Jasmine's smirk, slight but undeniable, met the fury head-on. It's not a conspiracy, Donald, she said, voice steady, almost serene. It's accountability. Facts do not conspire. They simply exist. And when you've chosen to cloak yourself in lies, the facts themselves become your adversary. The harder you resist, the clearer it becomes to everyone watching that you are alone. Alone with deception, alone with your fear. The energy in the room surged to a crescendo. Every camera swivel, every pen scratch, every held breath amplified the intensity. Trump's attempts to dominate had faltered. The combined force of Jasmine and her allies' evidence left him on the defensive, rattled, and visibly cornered. He jabbed again, trying to regain footing. You'll regret this. I built this empire. Jasmine's eyes did not waver. Her voice was calm, piercing, carrying the weight of inevitability. An empire built on lies is never stable. What you built is now exposed, and the world is watching. You are isolated, Donald, and every lie, every attempt to intimidate, every desperate shout only proves it further. The chamber was electric. Every spectator felt the shift in momentum. Every journalist's camera captured the storm of tension, and millions at home sensed that a turning point had arrived. Trump's fury, once a weapon, had become a liability. Jasmine's composure and the reinforcement of her allies' evidence had tipped the balance, leaving the former president exposed, cornered, and undeniably human in his vulnerability. And as Jasmine's gaze swept across the room, meeting each camera lens with quiet authority, she allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile. The message was clear. Truth had found its ally, and deceit stood alone. The stage was set, the battle escalating, and the world would remember every electrifying moment. For a brief heartbeat, the chamber was tense yet expectant, like the silent pause before a storm breaks. Jasmine leaned forward slightly, her eyes locking onto Trump's with a precision that was both unsettling and mesmerizing. The room seemed to shrink around them, the noise of cameras and whispers fading into the background as she prepared her next strike. Every detail mattered. The tilt of her chin, the calmness in her voice, the deliberate movement of her hand across the dossier. She was about to expose a vulnerability that even Trump himself had tried to conceal, a chink in the armor that could no longer be ignored. Donald, she began, her tone measured, almost conversational, yet underlined with an undeniable edge. All your talk about leadership, about legacy, it crumbles when we look at the decisions you've made behind closed doors. Decisions that betrayed not only the people you swore to serve, but the very institutions meant to safeguard them. Trump's eyes flickered with unease, a subtle twitch at the corner of his mouth betraying his inner discomfort. He jabbed a finger at her, attempting to regain dominance, voice rising into a bellow. That is ridiculous. Lies. You're twisting everything. You have no idea what you're talking about. Jasmine didn't flinch. She let the words hang in the air, then leaned forward just enough to punctuate the next revelation. No, Donald, she said, voice calm but cutting like a scalpel. You have been hiding behind bluster and bravado, but the world can now see that beneath the showmanship is fear. Fear of being exposed, fear of accountability, and fear that your so-called empire rests on foundations of deceit. The room reacted instantly. Reporters paused, pens hovering midair, cameras swiveled, capturing every twitch in Trump's face. The audience, both present and at home, felt the atmosphere tighten, as if the air itself were charged with electric tension. Even Trump's allies shifted uneasily, sensing the impact of Jasmine's words like ripples across a still pond suddenly struck by a stone. Trump slammed a hand against the table, microphone vibrating with the force. "You're attacking me personally. You have no right, no right. This is political theater," he roared, voice cracking at the edges, exposing the strain beneath his anger. Jasmine's lips curved into a subtle, controlled smile, eyes never leaving his. She opened the dossier again, flipping to a page with highlighted transactions, emails, and recorded remarks. "Political theater?" she echoed softly, the words dripping with precision. "Donald, this isn't theater. These are facts. Every page, every email, every clip shows the choices you made, the corners you cut, the people and laws you manipulated for personal gain. The theater is what you've tried to hide behind all these years. The reality, you're exposed." Trump's fists clenched, the color draining slightly from his face. He attempted to shout over her, to regain control, but each word came out fractured, less certain, more reactive. "You'll regret this. You can't. This isn't the way. People will see you for the liar you are." Jasmine's voice cut through the chaos, calm and unrelenting. "Donald, it's not about regret. It's about responsibility. And for once, you cannot yell your way out of it. Every attempt to intimidate, every desperate shout, only confirms what everyone already knows. Truth cannot be silenced by rage. It cannot be hidden by power." The camera angles widened, capturing the chamber in full. Trump, flustered, gesturing wildly. Jasmine, composed, deliberate, her every movement reinforcing authority. The audience, stunned, caught between disbelief and awe. Every flash, every whisper, every subtle gasp emphasized the shift in control. Jasmine had taken command, not with volume or aggression, but with focus, clarity, and the precise application of unassailable evidence. Trump tried once more, voice raw with frustration. "You can't destroy me. I built this. I've led. Jasmine held up a single hand, halting his words without a word, a gesture both commanding and symbolic. "You did build," she acknowledged, voice steady, deliberate. "But what you built on lies cannot stand. Every structure you thought unassailable has cracks. Cracks that we can see clearly now. Leadership isn't claimed with words or wealth. It is earned with integrity, transparency, and courage. And in this room, in front of the world, you have none of those." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Trump's own words seemed trapped in the air, unspoken, powerless. Jasmine's eyes scanned the room, over cameras, journalists, and the gallery. Her presence radiated authority, her calm conviction a magnetic force drawing every eye and holding it captive. The audience felt it. She controlled the narrative, controlled the energy, and had cornered her opponent in a way that left no escape. As she gently closed the dossier, the faintest of smiles lingering on her lips, she allowed a single sentence to hang in the room like a verdict. "The truth always finds its mark, and today, Donald, it has found yours." Every camera captured it. Every journalist noted it. Millions at home held their breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Jasmine had delivered a decisive strike, a masterstroke that shifted momentum irrevocably. Trump's fury, no matter how loud, could no longer dominate the room. Jasmine had executed the perfect combination of exposure, precision, and command, the ultimate calculated and inevitable blow. But just when it seemed the chamber had settled, the air thick with tension and awe, a subtle yet deliberate disruption began to creep in. Trump leaned forward, a calculating glint in his eyes, and began to manipulate the flow of information with surgical precision. He summoned aides to pass last-minute documents, distorted statements, and fragmented reports into the microphones, each one designed to confuse, distract, and muddy the water of truth Jasmine had so meticulously laid bare. "Look at this," he shouted, waving papers with theatrical flair, his voice rising into a crescendo of urgency and indignation. "You think the world will ignore this? Do you really believe your narrative can survive these facts? Cameras swung to capture the chaotic flurry, reporters scribbling furiously to keep pace, but Jasmine did not falter. She stood tall, eyes steady, aura unshakable, as if the room itself had contracted around her certainty. With a controlled gesture, she gestured toward the documents, flipping them open with deliberate precision. "Donald, scattering fragments does not create truth," she replied, her voice calm yet piercing, reverberating with authority. "These disjointed papers do not erase what has been exposed. They cannot rewrite facts. Your attempts to confuse, to mislead, only highlight how desperate you have become." Trump's lips twitched with frustration. He lunged verbally, every sentence a sharp jab meant to undermine Jasmine personally. "You think your little theatrics impress anyone? You're a fraud hiding behind words and screens. Everyone can see you're manipulating perceptions, just as I manipulate." Jasmine cut him off, her tone deliberate, each word a scalpel slicing through the storm of deceit. "Manipulate," she repeated softly, letting the word hang like a verdict. "Donald, the manipulation ends where evidence begins. You can throw papers, interrupt proceedings, or raise your voice, but truth does not bend. It does not falter, and the world is watching every desperate move you make." The chamber's atmosphere became electric, charged with a tension so thick it could be sliced with a knife. Spectators in the gallery leaned forward, eyes wide, unable to look away. Reporters glanced at each other, sensing the magnitude of the verbal and psychological duel unfolding before them. Every flicker of Trump's hand, every twitch of his jaw, contrasted sharply with Jasmine's controlled composure, amplifying the drama to a palpable intensity. "You're trying to destroy me," Trump roared, slamming the table with a force that made microphones tremble. "I've built this, led this country, and you—" "Led," Jasmine interjected, her voice slicing through the crescendo of chaos. "Donald, what you built was an empire of deception, and leadership is not measured by shouting, by spectacle, or by wealth. It is measured by integrity, accountability, and courage. The very things you have long avoided. And now in this room, under every camera lens, and in the eyes of the public, your true legacy is visible." Trump's face darkened, his fury now mixed with a flicker of uncertainty. His voice rose and fell erratically as he attempted to regain control. But the room was no longer just a chamber of debate. It had transformed into a battlefield of wills. Every effort to manipulate the narrative, every diversion, only strengthened Jasmine's position. She parried each verbal strike with precision, her words weaving a tapestry of logic, evidence, and unassailable truth. "You call this a performance?" Trump shouted, the desperation in his tone palpable. "You're trying to humiliate me in front of everyone. You'll pay for this. Everyone will know you're a fraud." Jasmine's eyes remained locked on him, unwavering. "Donald, pay attention," she said, calm yet lethal in delivery. "The humiliation is yours to carry. Every lie you've told, every attempt to obscure the facts, every desperate effort to regain dominance, this is the exposure you invited. And every time you try to distract, to intimidate, to manipulate, you only reinforce the clarity of what the world now sees. That deceit cannot outshine truth." Cameras captured every nuance, the tightening of Trump's jaw, the shaking of his hands, the subtle quiver in his voice. Reporters scribbled feverishly, capturing every micro-expression that revealed panic beneath the bluster. The audience, both in the chamber and at home, sensed the power shift. Trump's theatrics, once commanding, now appeared frantic. Jasmine's composure, once impressive, now seemed absolute, almost magnetic in its influence. Trump lunged for another verbal strike, words spilling like a torrent. "You think you're untouchable. You think you can control the narrative. People will see." Jasmine's smile was faint, controlled, deliberate. She raised a single hand to halt the cascade of chaos without uttering a word. Then softly, with a tone that carried both finality and precision, she delivered the line that cut through the storm. "The narrative is no longer yours, Donald. Every lie, every desperate manipulation, every attempt to control perception, it has failed. Truth does not bend, and power alone cannot protect you from it." The room went silent, the weight of her words settling like a heavy fog. Every eye followed her, every camera lens focused on her poised defiance, and every journalist's note confirmed that a turning point had been reached. Trump's attempts to play dirty had not restored control. They had exposed him further. Jasmine had defended her credibility, neutralized deception, and turned his aggression into a spectacle of vulnerability. And as she allowed the briefest, almost imperceptible nod toward the audience, the message was unmistakable. In the battle between manipulation and truth, deception may roar, but courage, precision, and evidence always speak louder. The chamber seemed to shrink around them, tension crackling like live wires. Trump leaned forward, eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and desperation, voice rising to a raw crescendo. "You think you can humiliate me? You think the world will side with you? You're a puppet, a joke, Jasmine cut him off, her voice sharp, steady, and dripping with calculated contempt. "A joke?" she echoed, leaning slightly forward, letting each word land with deliberate weight. "Donald, the joke is thinking that bluster, tantrums, and intimidation could ever mask the truth. Every lie you've spun, every attempt to manipulate reality, has only made your empire of deceit more transparent. And everyone here, everyone watching, can see it." Trump's face contorted, veins bulging as he slammed his hand onto the table. Microphones rattled with the force, his attempt to regain control failing spectacularly. How dare you? I've built this country. You have no idea what it takes." "Built this country?" Jasmine's eyes narrowed, her voice cutting through the chaos like a razor. "Donald, what you've built is smoke and mirrors. You manipulate, intimidate, and distort facts for personal gain. Leadership is not about loud proclamations or shiny towers. It's about accountability, honesty, and integrity. And in this chamber, under every camera, under every eye, your lack of these qualities is undeniable." The room seemed to vibrate with her words. Reporters leaned forward, pens paused midair, cameras swiveled to capture the spectacle, and the audience felt the intensity of the confrontation ripple through the air. Every gesture, every twitch of Trump's jaw, every flinch betrayed the faltering control he once held so confidently. Trump's voice cracked as he attempted to retaliate, a desperate volley of insults meant to cut Jasmine down. "You're a liar, a fraud. You've manipulated facts just like I—" Jasmine raised a hand, halting his barrage without breaking her composure. "Facts are not manipulated, Donald," she said softly, but with unmistakable authority. "They exist independently of your rage, independent of your attempts to rewrite history. And every attempt you make to dominate, to shout down the truth, only proves the power of what I, and the evidence, stand for. The world is watching, and the world is learning the truth, whether you accept it or not." Trump's gestures became erratic, almost theatrical in their desperation. He jabbed his finger, waved his arms, and tried to regain footing, but every movement only highlighted his unraveling. The contrast between him and Jasmine could not have been starker, one consumed by fury, the other radiating calm authority, every word measured, every pause deliberate, every expression controlled yet loaded with emotional weight. "You think you're clever," Trump barked, slamming the table again, his face red with anger. "People will see. They'll know you're a fraud. You can't control what's happening here." Jasmine's gaze swept across the room, locking with journalists, cameras, and spectators alike. Her voice softened, almost empathetic, yet carried the weight of moral authority. "Donald, I do not need to control what is happening. The truth does. And when the truth stands in full light, no amount of shouting, no amount of theatrics, no amount of intimidation can stop it. You can rage, you can scream, but the facts remain. They always have, and they always will." A hush fell over the chamber. Even Trump's allies seemed frozen, caught between his fury and the undeniable impact of Jasmine's words. Reporters leaned closer, capturing every second, while the audience at home could almost feel the tension pressing through the screens. The spectacle was no longer a political debate. It had transformed into a masterclass of confrontation, a collision of raw ego and disciplined, precise truth. Trump attempted one last verbal strike, voice trembling. "You'll regret this. Everyone will know your lies. You can't beat me." Jasmine's lips curved into a subtle, controlled smile. She leaned forward, eyes gleaming with conviction, and delivered the line that reverberated across the chamber like a verdict. "No, Donald. The only regret is thinking that deception could ever triumph over accountability. You cannot intimidate courage. You cannot obscure evidence. And today the world sees who truly stands for justice and who hides behind chaos." The microphone seemed to hum with the intensity of the moment. Every word hung in the air. Every camera lens captured her poise. Every journalist noted the shift. Trump's bluster had dissolved into frantic gestures, his fury exposed as powerless against a combination of reason, evidence, and unshakable resolve. And as Jasmine straightened, eyes sweeping the room one final time, the chamber seemed to acknowledge the turning point. The crescendo of confrontation had peaked. She had not only defended the truth, she had dominated the narrative, commanding both the room and the hearts of those watching. The ultimate clash, the apex of tension, had been reached, and for the first time, Trump's attempts to control the story had completely unraveled. Just when the room seemed to settle, a new force emerged, one no one had anticipated. An aide approached Jasmine quietly, passing her a sealed envelope marked with the insignia of an investigative agency. The murmurs in the chamber shifted instantly into gasps, whispers running through the gallery like wildfire. The contents of that envelope, it became clear, were not ordinary documents. They were explosive, indisputable evidence from outside the hearing itself. Evidence that could change everything. Trump's eyes widened as Jasmine carefully opened the envelope, the calmness in her demeanor striking against the chaos around her. She extracted the papers, scanning them with an almost imperceptible raise of her eyebrows. The air in the room grew heavier, anticipation clawing at the walls as everyone, reporters, aides, spectators, waited, breathless, for her next move. "These," she began, voice steady, deliberate, "are communications, recordings, and transactions that have long remained hidden from public scrutiny. They reveal the full extent of the attempts to manipulate, to deceive, to hide truths from those who rely on leadership and integrity. And now, with this clarity, every word I've spoken, every assertion of fact, every challenge to falsehood stands validated beyond question." The camera pans captured every subtle reaction. Trump's face drained of color, his lips twitching, hands trembling slightly as he grasped the table for support. His voice came out in a fractured attempt to regain control, but it lacked the confidence it had once carried. "This is fake, fabricated. You can't, these aren't real." Jasmine let the denial fall into silence. She held the documents up slightly, tilting them toward the light so the pages glimmered faintly, an almost symbolic gesture of illumination over darkness. Her eyes met Trump's with an icy calm that left no room for pretense or bluster. "Donald," she said softly with a hint of sarcasm that could cut through steel, "the truth always finds a way. It is relentless, patient, and uncompromising. You can shout, you can deny, you can throw tantrums, but when the evidence surfaces, it does not bend, it does not flinch, and it certainly does not hide." The chamber erupted, not in argument, but in stunned realization. Reporters leaned over their desks, capturing each detail, each micro-expression, every gasp. Social media notifications exploded in real time, millions of viewers at home glued to the screens, unable to look away. The magnitude of the revelation was staggering, a seismic shift that reshaped the perception of the entire confrontation. Trump's gestures became frantic. He pointed, waved, and shouted, attempting one last desperate volley of attacks. "You're lying! This is manipulated! You can't prove—" But Jasmine interrupted with a simple, measured hand raise, commanding silence without raising her own voice. She allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile to touch her lips, as if the act of truth revealing itself brought her quiet satisfaction. "Donald," she continued, voice calm but cutting, "the manipulations of the past, the schemes you've hidden, the falsehoods you've propagated, they have all been laid bare. There is no room left for denial, no strategy left to hide behind. And the world, the very people who watched you attempt to dominate this room, now see clearly what was once concealed. The truth is victorious. The camera panned across the audience. Faces of journalists, spectators, and officials mirrored the shock, disbelief, and awe. Whispers filled the room, punctuated by the occasional gasp as the weight of the twist sank in. Trump's allies shifted uneasily in their seats, the illusion of control he had clung to evaporating before their eyes. Trump's face darkened, a mixture of rage and desperation overtaking him. He attempted a final verbal strike, voice raw, desperate. "You think this ends here? You think people will see your lies too?" Jasmine's gaze never wavered. Her tone was steady, unflinching, a blade honed by hours of preparation and the unshakable knowledge of righteousness. "No, Donald," she said, voice firm and resonant. The lies ended the moment evidence, truth, and courage converged in this room. You can yell, you can flail, you can attempt intimidation. But history will record only what is real. And what is real is this: deceit cannot outlast accountability. Falsehood cannot outshine integrity. And power cannot shield you from the light of truth. Silence fell, heavier than any roar of confrontation. Trump's final attempts to regain dominance sputtered and failed, leaving him isolated, exposed, and utterly powerless. The media erupted, cameras capturing the moment, flashing lights reflecting off the glossy surfaces, each frame immortalizing the culmination of Jasmine's relentless pursuit of justice. The audience, both in the chamber and millions at home, understood the enormity. A single twist, a final piece of evidence, had shifted the balance irrevocably. And as Jasmine allowed herself the subtlest nod to the audience, the message resonated through every lens, every broadcast, every mind watching. Truth, no matter how long suppressed, no matter how fiercely resisted, always finds its way to victory. The chamber, once a battlefield of clashing egos, had finally begun to breathe again. The echoes of shouting, of slamming tables, of verbal assaults faded into a charged silence. Jasmine Crockett remained at the center, poised, composed, her presence radiating a quiet authority that demanded respect. Every eye in the room, every camera lens was fixed on her, not with expectation, but with recognition. She had not only won the confrontation, she had commanded history itself, rewriting the narrative with precision, courage, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Trump sat slumped, his expression a mixture of disbelief and defeat. His usual bravado had evaporated, replaced by the stark reality that the battle had been lost. Attempts at posturing, attempts at distraction, and even his most furious outbursts had crumbled under the weight of evidence and unassailable truth. The cameras captured every nuance: the twitch of a hand, the subtle fall of a shoulder, the faint, almost imperceptible falter in his voice. The public could see it all, millions of viewers absorbing each frame, each moment of unraveling power. Jasmine's allies stepped forward, presenting final clarifications and corroborating evidence, their voices calm but firm. Each revelation reinforced the inexorable logic of her case, leaving Trump with no foothold to regain control. Every piece of misinformation he had relied on had been exposed, every manipulation dismantled. The audience, the journalists, and the cameras themselves seemed to lean in, as if acknowledging the meticulous orchestration of justice that had unfolded in real time. The room erupted, not in applause, but in the collective acknowledgement of a battle concluded. Reporters whispered rapidly into their microphones, headlines forming instantly in their minds. A narrative that would dominate news cycles, social media, and conversations for weeks to come. The magnitude of the moment was almost tangible. History itself had been scripted in the tense seconds of confrontation, and Jasmine Crockett had authored the final lines. Trump attempted to rise to make a final statement, but hesitation crept into his movements. Words that might have carried power now stumbled in the air, unconvincing and hollow. He gestured, then paused. He raised his voice, then faltered. The realization was undeniable. The momentum had shifted irreversibly. The court of public opinion, the lens of the media, and the undeniable presence of evidence had declared a victor. Jasmine, sensing the moment's completion, allowed herself a brief, almost imperceptible smile. She adjusted the papers in her hands, straightened her jacket, and exhaled softly. Calm, controlled, unshakable. "This concludes today's proceedings," she said, her voice measured yet infused with authority. "Truth has been laid bare. Justice has spoken, and those who sought to manipulate it have been held accountable." The room seemed to exhale collectively. The tension that had gripped the chamber for hours finally dissipated, replaced by a reverent awareness of the triumph of integrity. Trump retreated to his seat, muttering under his breath, a man confronted with the reality of exposure and the collapse of his carefully constructed defenses. The media pounced, cameras flashing, capturing every detail of his defeat, every nuance of his frustration, and every unguarded moment of vulnerability. Jasmine began to leave the chamber. Her steps were steady, purposeful, each one resonating with the gravity of her victory. The camera followed her, capturing the subtle sway of her shoulders, the determined set of her jaw, and the unyielding fire in her eyes. Spectators rose slightly in their seats, journalists murmured in awe, and the weight of her presence carried through every lens, every broadcast, and every mind tuned to witness this moment. Outside, the world waited. Social media erupted. Headlines splashed across screens. News channels dissected every word, every gesture, every nuance. Jasmine had not only defended the truth, she had elevated it. She had turned a hearing, a battle of words and evidence, into a symbolic victory for justice itself. Millions recognized the magnitude. This was not merely a political victory, but a triumph of courage, integrity, and relentless pursuit of what is right. Trump, isolated and cornered by both evidence and public scrutiny, had no recourse. Every attempt to deflect, to manipulate, to reclaim control had been nullified by Jasmine's clarity, composure, and strategic brilliance. The world, watching through millions of lenses, witnessed the collapse of pretense and the undeniable rise of accountability. As Jasmine exited the chamber, the sunlight glinting off the edges of the building, her head held high, every eye that followed her understood the story had reached its conclusion. Justice had spoken. Truth had triumphed. And in that quiet, powerful moment, Jasmine Crockett became more than a participant in history. She became a symbol that courage and integrity, even in the face of fury, deception, and power, could prevail. The final image lingered. Jasmine's silhouette walking confidently away from the chamber, the weight of victory in her stride, the fire of justice shining in her eyes. Behind her, the room held the remnants of chaos, the echoes of confrontation, and the undeniable imprint of a battle that had changed the course of the narrative forever. And for every viewer, journalist, and citizen witnessing the event, the lesson was clear and unforgettable. In the end, truth does not just survive, it triumphs. In a world where power tempts deception and fear silences courage, Jasmine Crockett's stand reminds us that integrity is the truest form of strength. Truth, once embraced and wielded with courage, cannot be buried. It enlightens, empowers, and transforms. May we each carry that fire in our own lives, choosing honesty over convenience, justice over indifference, and courage over complacency, so that even the smallest acts of integrity ripple outward, shaping a world braver and better than we found it. If this battle for truth gripped you, don't scroll. Feel it. Talk about it. Share it with someone who still believes justice matters. Like, comment, and send it to those who know courage can topple lies. Subscribe to Harrison Stories, where no deception goes unchallenged. Hit the bell, because the next confrontation will push limits. It's intense, and it might just change how you see power, integrity, and accountability. This story is a fictional dramatization inspired by real courage in the fight against manipulation. Any resemblance to actual people or events is coincidental or symbolic, meant for reflection and critique. Thanks for watching. Justice isn't given, it's claimed. This is Harrison Stories.